hate when your ear gets itchy right when the show starts. It's Mr. Irrelevant on your Wednesday. I'm Alex Strouf with you from the Everlight Solar Studio in downtown Madison, Wisconsin. As always, alongside producer Tiny Hands, the great Hunter Vaughn with me, per usual. It's Super Bowl week. I'm jacked up about the game on Sunday, I got to be honest with you. I now have plans for the game on Sunday. I'm going to be right by Lambeau Field, which I'm excited about. So looking forward to that. But I have like an overarching thought on Super Bowl week because we had the opening day, essentially the media sessions Monday night when Travis Kelce and George Kittle and everybody, Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes are meeting with the media. You also have Kyle Shanahan might have been drunk on Monday. I'm good with it, right? Like he was slurring his words. He was a little bit slower than usual. People were speculating maybe he had a few too many. I'm fine with that, right? Like who gives a damn? So I love Vegas, though. I actually think this should be a normal rotation for Super Bowl week. Now, obviously, we need to see the game, and the 49ers allegedly having issues with their practice field. But I love that the Super Bowl is located in, like, the party-centric city that is Las Vegas. So I'm in on Vegas as a Super Bowl host city. I'm in on the atmosphere, the parties, the ability for the fans to go out and lose all their damn money, leading up to the big game on Sunday. So I am all in on Las Vegas Super Bowl, all in on it. The only issue I have with it is they don't have any Lake Louis Badger Club out there because it's a local beer, and it is our great beer, the official beer of Mr. Irrelevant. Badger Club from Lake Louis Brewing in Verona. Delicious, wonderful. You got to try it. We've got some big things coming with them. We're going to determine the best burger in Madison beginning Monday. We'll have more details on that on Monday's show, but big thanks to our friends from the Badger Club and Lake Louis Brewing in Verona for their support of the show and jumping on board with us and looking forward to getting this thing cooking. Anyway, but Las Vegas is a terrific host city. And obviously, like I said, we need to see the game be played and see how that goes. But I think it should be in a rotation. And look, I get the speculation. Like I saw Pat McAfee earlier this week was talking about how the Super Bowl needs to be in Indy or needs to go back to Indy. I think there was one played there. And I get, sharing the love, bringing it to different NFL markets. But I think we could probably have like a 5-city rotation. And Vegas shows up twice as much as the rest of them. Because I just think it makes sense to have the Super Bowl there, right? Like L.A., with SoFi should probably be in the rotation. Dallas with AT&T should be in the rotation. Miami should probably be in the rotation. But that's probably it. Maybe Atlanta.
Dallas hasn't gotten one since the Packers.
Is that the only one they've had?
With this new stadium, yeah.
Interesting.
Jerry's been very upset about it because it's just everyone else keeps building new stadiums. So
right.
He's just like, I can't get in.
Yeah, and obviously, look, like Green Bay will never have one. And that's okay. There's not the infrastructure, but also like who wants to play in Green Bay in the beginning or middle of February? I don't blame you for that as much as I love the city of Green Bay. So I think, and again, we need to see what happens when the game is played. We need to see what happens once it goes down. But I am super in on Vegas as the Super Bowl host city. So that's my first thought. Let's move to the NBA before getting back to the NFL. Former Packers right tackle, Super Bowl champion, and our friend of the show, Bryan Bulaga, going to join us in about 10 minutes to break down. We're going to reflect a little bit. Yesterday was the 13-year anniversary of Super Bowl 45. I have some questions for him about that game and that experience and what this week is like for a player, especially a young player like Bryan Bulaga was back in 2011 for Super Bowl 45. But and then I want to talk a little bit about what the Packers are building here, right? And we'll do that in just a second. But the Bucs, I want to know where the panic meter is, because for me, I'm just getting into the Bucs, right? Like I've always said, I'm not the biggest NBA guy in the world that goes football season, and then I fully dive into college hoops and a little bit into the NBA, but it's not even the All-Star break yet. But obviously what the Bucs did is controversial. It's different. They're a second-place team. They fire their head coach. They bring in an outside guy like Doc Rivers to try to come in and turn this thing around, especially on the defensive side of things. Now, last night, the Bucs lose. Chris Middleton gets hurt. Dame doesn't play. Like, you can't put too much stock into that loss. I get that. But it's 5 games under Doc Rivers, all on a West Coast road trip. 1-4 the Bucs record. You play tough games like Denver. You lose to Utah. You lose last night to Phoenix. I don't know that the panic meter should be really high, but it should be telling you something, right? Like, okay, this is not going to be a 1-week turnaround. This is not going to be a 2-week turnaround. Good things take time. And while I think the Doc Rivers hire was the best you could make at the time they made it, it's going to take time in order to get the ship corrected. this stuff corrected. And in order to get to where you want to get to, which is obviously winning another LOB, I think it's going to take time. And I'm not freaking out quite yet about a 1-4 start under Doc Rivers, but yeah, obviously not ideal for a guy when you try to take a big swing, right? Like you're taking a big swing, you're taking a big risk in the middle of the season by firing your brand new first-year head coach, bringing in a guy that has consistently been knocked for not being able to win the big game. And yeah, there's some truth to that. So I struggle with where the panic meter should be at, but All-Star break coming up next week. They'll get a little bit of a break. Dame and Giannis get to go enjoy the All-Star festivities, and then we'll see what they are afterwards. They're still a good team. They still are constructed, right? Like Doc walked into the best situation he could have because he has two of the best players of all time, two of the top 50 players ever in Dame Lillard and Giannis collaborating. And then you have other really good pieces. Trade deadline coming up, I believe, tomorrow. So we'll see if the Bucks move. John Horst always makes a move, it seems, at the deadline. But we will see what happens. All right, that's enough on the Bucks. I want to talk about the Packers because I'm kind of looking at what they're doing and viewing it as like okay, this is a team that seriously understands what's happening, right? Like where they are. They understand the position in which they're in, which is they want to compete for a Super Bowl next year, right? At this time next year, they don't want to be sitting on the couch and making staff changes like they're doing this week. They want to be in, well, not Vegas, but they want to be in the host city doing the media frenzies, getting ready to play in the Super Bowl on Sunday afternoon. It's realistic because the NFC isn't that great, right? San Francisco will be back and solid. Detroit will be okay. But we know the NFC, as it was this year, is very top-heavy. I think Green Bay's in that mix now. And the way in which they are constructing their staff and the way in which Brian Gutekunst spoke to the media during his end-of-season press conference last week is they're going to take some big swings. And in terms of staff positions, they've taken some big swings. Right, they offered the job to Zach Orr, now the Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator position to him, and they did their due diligence. They interviewed a ton of people, and then out of nowhere, Jeff Hafley is named the defensive coordinator, now the former head coach at Boston College. That's a swing. It's a young guy. They want some energy. It's fun. Jason Rebrovich is back. He was the outside backers coach, now going to coach the defensive line. They have an assistant alongside with him. They bring in Ryan Downard as the defensive back coach, and they bring in Derek Ansley as the pass game coordinator, who is the former defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. There was 1 year of overlap, by the way, between Ansley and Bryan Bulaga. Bulaga was on IR that year, 21, the final year of his career. When he was a Charger, Ansley was in his first year as the D-backs coach that year. So I'll get Blue's thoughts on that as well. But the big swing that everybody's talking about, that everybody's excited about, is their new linebackers coach and run game coordinator, Anthony Campanile, from Miami. He was with the Dolphins last year. And he had like an all-time great moment on Hard Knocks, the in-season Hard Knocks on HBO this year. And I'm fired up about it. I hadn't watched it until about an hour ago. I saw it was making the rounds this week when Campanile was announced as the new linebackers coach. This is exactly the type of guy you would run through a brick wall for, and it is important for you to see this. We've cleaned it up. We've beeped I believe it's 13 F words dropped in this clip.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah, that's all. In like a 90-second clip. Anthony Campanile in the in-season Hard Knocks. Take a listen.
You're at your best when you're doing things for people you love. All the time you practice, all the time you spend away from the people you love, okay? Our job is on Sunday, literally, to honor those people. That's it. That's our job. To go out there and honor the people you love. Play as hard as you can. Attack the ball like it's some guy running down the street with your mother, your father. I don't know who my kids, whatever. Like, that would make me out of my mind. There ain't no way that guy's getting away from me. And there certainly ain't anybody getting in my path to block me, to stop me from bringing them back in my life. That ain't gonna happen. Okay? But if you treat it like that all the time, you practice like that, you commit to practicing like that with each other, you're unstoppable. Don't know who the is gonna stop you from doing what you want to do. Everybody understands ass whooping, okay? I can go to Greece and somebody start getting their ass whooped. We all understand what's happening. Okay? We're all speaking the same language, right? We might not be able to communicate, but if somebody getting their ass kicked, nothing's lost in translation, okay? all over the world, they speak ass whooping, okay, to the day you die, okay? So here's what I'm saying. Let's eliminate that factor. They can't outwork you. Eliminate that, and let's see what the happens. Let the chips fall where they may, okay? Let's all just commit to each other. That's what we're going to do. Don't stop throwing punches. Don't stop attacking the ball. Don't stop finishing blocks, and then we'll see what happens. All right? Love you guys. Let's go have a great practice.
Love you guys. Let's go have a great effing practice. Love that from the new linebackers coach, Anthony Campanile, for the Green Bay Packers. Look, like I said, you want juice in that room. You want energy. And you've got a young coaching staff. You have a really young roster. And bringing in young, energetic dudes that connect well with these players and can tell a message like that. Ass whippings are universal. And he's right about that. So I really like that from the new LB's coach.
That might be just my new catchphrase. Like,
ass whoopings are universal?
That's a universal language.
It is.
Doesn't matter where you go.
It is a universal language. And, so just seeing the way this roster came together, or rather this coaching staff came together for Matt LaFleur on the defensive side of the ball. You let go of Joe Barry, who's now taken Campanile's job out in Miami. He's the new linebackers coach there. Joe Barry will come to Green Bay this year. I love the swings they take. They have a former defensive coordinator in Derek Ansley. They have a former head coach leading the way in Jeff Hafley. They bring back Jason Rebrovich, who will continue to work with Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith and Lucas Van Ness and guys on the outside, which is really exciting. But they make other changes, and you just have so much experience and a lot of guys that just aren't very old, right? Like I mentioned last week, Hafley's only 44, Ansley's 42, Campanile's young, and you see the energy he provides for a team that needs some energy. So that's just one piece of the puzzle, though. Elsewhere, I look at Bryan Bulaga and what he has to say. And we know this team has like 4 picks in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft, and they're going to utilize those and probably fill some gaps, right? Whether that's inside linebacker or safety or maybe some offensive line depth. But also Bryan Bulaga says he feels comfortable in terms of free agency that they can go and sign impact players, which was a plural from Bryan Bulaga last week. So I view this as the new version of kind of the Packers going all in. Now, that's not a 1-year all in. That might be a multiple year, just given how young the important pieces on their offense are. But this team understands the window's open, and they're wasting no time to get after it. And some of these coaching staff moves, I think, indicate that, which with Anthony Campanile, who really excites me. But also, as I mentioned, Derek Ansley, the former Chargers defensive coordinator, who's popping in as well as the D-backs coach and pass game coordinator for this team. So all in on all of it. Packers are all in. I'm fired up, and I'm fired up to have the conversation, which we'll have now. Our buddy Bryan Bulaga joins us, former Packers right tackle and a Super Bowl champion. B. Bulaga, how are you, buddy? Good to see you.
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. I was reflecting yesterday as I was rifling off an email to you. It was the 13-year anniversary of Super Bowl 45 yesterday, your 31-25 win in your rookie year over the Pittsburgh Steelers in Texas. And, thinking back on that, Bryan, and I know you've been asked this question a million times as you reflect on that game, but you were the youngest player to ever start a Super Bowl at that point at right tackle. And I know you've told the story of James Campen, your offensive line coach at the time, telling you the night before that you would be the youngest player to ever start in a Super Bowl. Did that throw you off when he told you that? Like, did that take you back and you were like, why'd you tell me that today?
No, I mean, it didn't really throw me off. I kind of looked at this may be a cool Jeopardy question in the future. I don't think anyone could have really told me anything at that point that would have made me even more nervous than I already was, and made me, get even more in my head than, as a rookie starting in a Super Bowl. It was just kind of like, you kind of look at the big picture of, man, there's been a lot of Super Bowls played, and I'm the youngest guy to be starting in one. So it was kind of, a cool, crazy stat, but I did tell him after the game, like, you could have held off on that just a little bit longer. That would have been nice. Like, maybe after the game, that would have been a cool, fun fact. But it didn't do much. But it was, in the moment, that whole night was kind of a blur because we did the ring fitting and all that kind of stuff. So it just kind of blended in with the night. And then, obviously, the next day we played and we won. And then it really kind of sank in, which was cool.
Yeah, and I love that story of Mike McCarthy, your head coach at the time, bringing you guys to get your rings fitted the night before the Super Bowl. Like, it kind of, what was the mentality? Like, what was the mindset when you're already getting the rings fitted prior to playing the game? Is it almost like a we can't lose mentality that he was putting in all of your brains, or what was that like?
I'm not sure if what the psyche was on it. All I know is that the room was fired up when he said we were going to do that. Like, everyone was juiced up. It brought a little more buzz to the room than there already was for normally the Saturday night meeting that you have before a game on Sunday. It's normally, pretty good vibe in there, and the room's, buzzing. But then when he said that at the end, guys were really fired up. And, to me, it just, like, it kind of let the facts sink in. Like, we do what we need to do tomorrow. We're going to get one of these things for real. Yeah, we're getting fitted tonight, but we're going to get one of these. And as a rookie, again, like, it's hard to really let it all sink in because it was my first year, and it's hard to, know the gravity of the situation. Yes, obviously we're in a Super Bowl. It's the biggest game, of every season. We get it. I understand that. But when you're a rookie and you're just trying to make sure you do what you need to do to help the team win, you don't really think about the big picture of it. I was more worried about, like, all right, like, go get the ring fitted. This is really cool. Like, yeah, I want one of these. This is awesome. But I was more just worried about what was about to happen the next day. Like, like, everything to me was anything could have been said on Saturday night. We could have, they could have actually brought out the actual rings that we got and said, here they are. And it would have just gone, like, right over my head, because the only thing I cared about was what was about to take place the next day, like, and making sure I was dialed into what I needed to do to help the team win. And that's, and I look back on it and I'm like, man, that, like, really cool scenario and situation that Mike laid out for us, and getting guys to think and give that little bit of extra motivation. But at the end of the day, like I said, when you're young, inexperienced, don't know any better, you're just kind of, one-track mindset of, what I need to do.
And I imagine, like you mentioned, being so young, it's your rookie year, you win a Super Bowl. And I imagine going forward, you guys went 15-1 the next year, right? So you're like, hey, man, this is great. We're going to win the Super Bowl every year. We're gonna have a real shot every year, which you did. But unfortunately, it's just so damn hard to win in the league. You never got back there. And I imagine as a rookie, you're probably thinking, oh, man, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this 5 more times. I'm going to be better than Tom Brady in terms of the right tackling.
Yeah, like, I mean, obviously, you win it, your rookie year, and then, like you said, the next year you're going 15-1, and you're just kind of like, man, like, this is life in the NFL. Like, this isn't that bad. Like, and then obviously the wake up call happens against the Giants, and you're like, wow, like, how good was that team that we go into the playoffs and we lose? Like, it's wild. Like, and then it, it really, hits you in the gut. Like, this isn't easy to do. It's not easy to continue to go back every year or get the opportunity to even beat an NFC championship every year. It's hard. And, I mean, obviously biggest, I don't even know if I call it a regret, because there's so many things that play into it. But, like, the thing that I always think, like, just to get back to one more, like, not even, 3 or 4 or 5 more, but just one more. That's the thing I look back on most, like, because we had a lot of good opportunities, a lot of really good teams, and to not be able to at least get back to one, that's probably the thing that hurts the most.
I believe that, but also you have to keep in mind, Bryan, like, so many guys that are so damn good never get to one, let alone win one, right? And you always have that, right? That can't be taken from you, which is a good part. But I like, I mean, it's such a football player mentality. You were part of some really damn good teams, and ultimately you did win with the very first one you were a part of. What's this week like? And I know you were a young player, but there's so much buzz and so much going on, right? Like the media thing that goes on Monday night of Super Bowl week. You're out in your terms. It was Arlington and Dallas, but this week for the Chiefs and Niners out in Vegas all week. Like, what's the buzz? How do you keep the focus? What's the practice like? Is it like a normal practice? Does it feel different? Like, bring me inside what Super Bowl week is like for these players that are experiencing it this week.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's kind of a week unlike any other, right? Like, obviously, you're not at your home facility, so the logistics of getting to practice and everything beforehand is way different. That week we were there, obviously, we were supposed to practice at SMU, an outdoor stadium field. It was frozen over. And if there's any snow in Texas, everything essentially shuts down. There's no such thing as like plowing the field or getting it, cleaned off. So we went and practiced at a local high school's indoor facility. Yeah, I said that. High school's indoor football facility.
Texas. Yeah.
Yeah. So that obviously that changed the dynamic of, our schedule and routine, but the practices actually ended up being some of the best, most intense, crisp practices that we had all year. I mean, they were the best we had all year. I mean, they were extremely intense, physical, focused. It felt like, every practice was a mini game. That's how ready the team was. And we were so locked in and dialed in. I mean, it felt like practice went by in an hour. It was probably more like 3, but
yeah. Practice
went by so quick because everyone was so focused on what they needed to do. And, throughout the week, what makes it different is normally, especially as a rookie, I would do media every now and again, wouldn't be in the locker room too much. If I did, I'd be in there for 5 to 10 minutes, do what I needed to do. At the Super Bowl, you're required to go into some ballroom after every practice and sit down at a table, and you're there and they start a timer and you sit there until the timer goes off. And so that was every day after practice, had to go down to this thing, and media members, obviously tons of them. It is the Super Bowl, from all over the place, all different publications and radio stations and news stations and, whatever it may be. Sit down at a table and they ask you the question. And it's not like they all do it at once. So you may get the same question 5 or 6 times throughout this 40-minute session. And you kind of have to just keep answering it. And, it gets a little repetitive. Obviously, guys like Aaron Rodgers and guys like that, they get different questions all the time. I mean, they have a set time. They go, they roll, and people either make it or they don't. It's different than, us mere mortals that, have to do media. But the thing that I did like about it that was totally different, obviously you stay at your hotel and then the meetings and everything's set up at the hotel. So you could, essentially, go from your room right to the meeting rooms and just stay down there, watch tape, watch practice, meet with your coach. If you had a question, you could shoot him a text. He'd meet you down in the meeting room. I did that a bunch that week just to make sure that I was totally in sync with what the plan was and what we were doing. I mean, there'd be, nights after normal meetings that I'd stay with Campy for an extra 30, 40 minutes, going over tape, going over the plan, just to make sure that I had everything that I needed. And if I had any questions, I could ask them, and we can kind of talk over, just basic things, and then pass rush plans against these DNs. Harrison and Woodley, obviously, very good pass rushers, so kind of go over plans against them. And to me, it was a really good week of prep. So while it was different, to me, the change was good. The change of scenery was good, and it helped out. Now, guys, every guy can do their own thing, right? If they were done with practice, obviously done with meetings, if they wanted to go out with their family or do whatever, they had the freedom to do that. We had a curfew and bed check and all that none of that changed. But I think I went out to dinner with, my family once or twice. And after that, I kind of was just like, hey, got to leave me be, leave me alone. I need to, this is a normal week for me. And I'm going to treat it the same way I did all year and do what I need to do. I don't go out to dinners every night, during the regular season. That's not something I do. So I'm going to treat this the exact same way. If we want to meet up on Friday or something like that to do a dinner with the family, we could do that. That's fine with me, but we're not meeting Thursday night. We're not meeting Wednesday night. We're not it's not happening. So, I was pretty fortunate that I was able to keep the same routine from start to finish, essentially, obviously change of scenery and everything, but it was a good week of prep. And that's what really sticks out to me is how the team was focused and practiced throughout that week.
Yeah, that's awesome, Brian. Thanks for sharing that. And it's just it's just crazy because I was sitting and we see some of the clips rolling if you're watching on the video side from that Super Bowl, just reflecting on how crazy of a game that was, right? Like I looked at the box score yesterday, Brian, and I just forgot this throughout time. Rodgers threw the ball 39 times in that game. You ran it 11. Right, like that was you and Rodgers did what he does best, right? Is just pick apart defenses, and that was such a classic game. And Greg had such a big game, 2 touchdowns for him. Jordy had over 100 yards, and you guys picked up. You mentioned Woodley and Harrison. You guys you really handled them super well, and for being a rookie on that stage, I think they were both all pros that year, if I'm not mistaken. So like they came in.
I wouldn't be shocked, yeah.
with a hell of a defense. So anyway, all right, that's enough reflection on that Super Bowl. We got one coming up on Sunday, Brian. 49ers Chiefs. Rematch of a couple of years ago. I'm actually I was kind of pissed off after championship weekend. I would have liked to see Baltimore, Detroit, get me some fresh blood in there. But I'm starting to embrace the fact that these are probably the 2 best teams in football. And I think it's going to be a slobber knocker on Sunday as Mahomes looks for his 3rd. Brock Purdy's in the big game. Like I'm actually starting to hype myself up quite a bit about this one. Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if the fact that Pat Mahomes is in another one with a team that was supposed to be bad this year and they were playing bad and this and that, like they have no receivers. I mean, to me, it's the guy's almost like inevitable now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes you kind of worried for the AFC because if they do surround them with more receiver talent, it may not even be a question, right? Like it's just like Brady when Brady would like. Yep. He's gonna be in the AFC Championship, and there's a high chance that he wins that and goes to the Super Bowl. Like that's kind of what we're looking at with the Chiefs right now. Obviously, time changes these things, right? Like guys will leave the team or contractually they won't be able to hold on to him. I mean, Mahomes probably when he redoes his contract in 2 years is going to be getting paid like $65 million a year. That's hard to hold on to a guy like that at that salary and keep all the talent around him. So. He'll have to make adjustments there, but it's hard to bet against the Chiefs right now. And I get it. The 49ers have a squad and a lot of really good players, and I get that. But if we've watched the 49ers over the last 2 weeks, or 3 weeks technically because it was an off week last week, and against Detroit and against Green Bay, I don't think they can continue to play that way and win games. Like it's not going to be possible. Like I truly believe if they play the way they did against Detroit, against Kansas City, Mahomes isn't going to let them back in that game.
Mm-mm.
Like it's just not going to happen. So that's the only thing that I'd be concerned about if I was betting on the 49ers or was a 49ers fan, is that if this team comes out in a very similar manner that they did against Green Bay, and I mean, listen, by all rights, they beat Green Bay, but Green Bay should have won that football game, right?
Definitely.
At least I feel that way. And then what they did against Detroit, and Detroit should have won that football game. I mean, a lot of bad decision making in the second half there. But if they do that in the Super Bowl, they are not going to be allowed back in the game. Kansas City will not do it. Their defense is too good.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat Mahomes, he'll kill the clock. He will do everything in his power, and that's why he is who he is. So that's the way I'm hoping San Francisco comes out better, right? And we actually get a great Super Bowl, and it's a high, I don't know about high scoring game, or none of that really matters, but that it's just a good game. So is San Francisco capable of it? Absolutely they are. They have all the horses to be able to go out there and beat the Chiefs. And if you look at it on paper, they should, right? Yep. Like they should go out there and beat the Chiefs. But there's something about Kansas City getting into these games that it's just hard to bet against them. But I think it's going to be a good game. I'm excited about it. Like, it's the Super Bowl, man. Like, no matter who's in it, you watch it and you're excited about it. And it always makes you think, like, could be us next year. Could be us next year. And that's why it's like the greatest sport ever, because it's and every sport can say that, but not really every sport can say that, right? Like, a lot of the times the playoffs in these other sports are boring and there's really only 3 or 4 good teams total. You saw more parity in this league than ever before. With Detroit, with Green Bay, a 7 seed should have, beat the 2 seed, should have beat the 1 seed.
Houston comes
things
out
like
of nowhere,
that.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so much parity. And to your point, I totally agree with you. It's any given Sunday always. But you mentioned it earlier. Like, Mahomes and the Chiefs almost have the Brady effect now. You can't pick against them because you've seen them do it at home, right? 6 straight AFC championship games. But to go on the road back-to-back weeks, win both of those games in hostile environments in Buffalo and Baltimore, like, I just can't pick against them, despite the fact, as you said, San Francisco on paper is the better team. They have all the horses, right? Defensively, they're better. They have the best left tackle in football. They have the best running back in football. They have one of the best tight ends in football. I just can't pick against Kansas City. I can't do it. I'm embracing greatness. And, I was upset, to your point, like, Green Bay should have beat San Francisco. Detroit should have beaten San Francisco. So I think I was sour grapes when I was pissed off that the Packers weren't still playing at championship weekend. But now I've come around to it, and I'm like, okay, these are probably the 2 best teams.
Yeah, I mean, listen, San Francisco is a really good team. They got tons of talent, and there's no denying that. To me, it's almost like they come out of the gates thinking these teams are just gonna, wilt away to the power of the team, right? Because they have so many studs, and they just think teams are. And I'm not going to say they're coming out lazy and unfocused, but I think, they expect to intimidate teams, and they're 2 times playing in the playoffs. Teams are not afraid of them; they are not backing down from them, and obviously Kansas City will not do that on the biggest stage. So I expect San Francisco to come out a little bit hotter out of the gates in this one and make it more competitive early on, so they're not trying to have to, make up 21 points in the second half. I don't see this going that way, but yeah, I mean, I have to go with the Chiefs. Like, it's just, and it's not that I want to pick them. It's not that I love Kansas City by any stretch of the imagination. It's just I have a hard time picking against Pat Mahomes at this point. Like, it's just really hard to do. So as much as I don't want to see Taylor Swift on TV, as much as I don't want to see the Swift Mahomes box and Kelsey box up on every other, after every catch or every play that goes Kansas City's way, like, it's just hard for me to pick against them. And that's just the way it is right now.
Yeah, they're inevitable. You're right about that. I wonder, like, with Usher performing the halftime show, I don't know if there's a Taylor Swift angle, if the mob will come out and be like, hey, she should replace Usher because she's already. Anyway, I don't know. Before I let you go,
not.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to see Usher. I only know like 5 songs by him, but he'll be good. Are you an Usher guy?
I mean, I'm not an Usher guy, but I know his big songs. I mean, he's got to bring out Lil Jon. He's got to bring out some good names, right, to do some of these songs. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I think it'll be a good show. I'm not really a halftime show kind of guy. Like, it's not really something I stick around for and make sure I watch. But if it's good music, I'll watch a little bit of it. Like, if it was Taylor Swift performing, I probably wouldn't watch it. So it just depends on who's performing. Like, that's just what it is.
How about the commercials? Are you like chit-chatting during the commercial breaks, or are you locked in?
No, I chit-chat. If it, like, I got an eye on the screen, and then, I'm holding conversation. Because if it's a good commercial, I want to make sure I'm able to see it. And obviously they replay them after they air on the Super Bowl. Right. Those are, like, ones that they replay. Or you'll see them on social media the next day, which is, always good in case you miss one. But, what is it, $7 million for a 30-second spot?
Insane.
I mean, just absolutely wild stuff. So, for that much money, the commercial better be good, and it better grab it. It better grab attention. We'll just put it that way.
No, you're right about that. All right, Bryan, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about Derek Ansley, who was the D-backs coach in Los Angeles your last year. And I don't know how much of a relationship you guys had, but he's coming into Green Bay now as the passing game coordinator. Any insight you can provide for Packers fans on maybe his background and what he brings to Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I know him well, or I had a bunch of conversations with him, because I didn't. My years in LA, obviously the first year I was there, it was COVID. You were barely in the building, barely saw any human being besides your position coach and players, and you went out to practice, and then you went back in and left. So, I can't say I know him well, but I know him well enough to obviously know that he's a smart football coach. The guys really liked him in his room and respected him. Obviously, he's coming kind of from that Vic Fangio, Brandon Staley system, so he's going to kind of have to change his approach with obviously the new DC kind of being a secondary coach, right? A D-back secondary type coach. He's very involved there. So there's going to have to be some retraining of thought and technique and schematics there on Ainsley's side. But I think he brings good knowledge, to Green Bay. I think he's going to help guys out. I think he's going to obviously the scheme comes from the new DC, right? Like he's not bringing something in to implement that's his own. All the ideas are going to be, coming in new. So he'll have to adapt to that. But I think he'll be able to, and he'll be able to really communicate and get his message across to guys. And I think he'll do a good job. They're bringing in some coaches that obviously have a lot of experience in this Salah-ish type 49ers type defense, and that's, to me, I think a good scheme to be putting in place in Green Bay. So I'm excited about it. Like I said before, this is going to be kind of one of those things where we're not going to know much about this scheme until week 1 of the regular season.
True that.
We're not going to get a lot of tell in preseason. It'll be really plain Jane, not giving away any looks, because that's the biggest thing for these new DCs and bringing in a new scheme is you don't want to give anything away prior to it, especially who we brought in, right? Not really any NFL experience calling plays, right? What goes from college doesn't always translate to the NFL, so you can't go watch his Boston College tape and go, yep, well, here we go. This is what we're going to get. It's not going to work that way. So we're not really going to understand how all this fits together until week 1. But, I think the staff that he's building is good. I obviously trust Matt LaFleur to be looking over this to make sure that the right pieces are getting put in place from a coaching standpoint that relates well to the players. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the change. I think it's going to be good. And I think Ainsley's going to do a good job with what he's tasked to do.
I appreciate the insight on that, Brian, and hopefully at this time next year when we're chatting about the Packers in the Super Bowl, we're meeting up in New Orleans on Bourbon Street and having a few ahead of Super Bowl 59. You're the best, buddy. Appreciate you taking some time. We'll do it again soon. All right.
No problem, man. Appreciate you.
He's the best. Bryan Bulaga, Super Bowl champion, former Packers right tackle, and you hear him all the time on the Homer Hour on ESPN Milwaukee's with Wilde and Tausch on Wednesdays as well. So he does a bunch of work with us here at ESPN Wisconsin. But I wanted to have him on today because I was in a very reflective mood yesterday about Super Bowl 45, and I just love that stat. At the time, he was the youngest player to ever start in Super Bowl. That is a hell of a stage to be put on as a rookie, who, by the way, wasn't even starting yet, right? He was drafted in the first round. He's a high pick. Tausch goes down in week 4, and Bulaga, who had never played right tackle, high school, college, or obviously early on in the league, he'd always been a left tackle or left guard. And then week 4, he gets thrown in at right tackle, and he hangs on to that position for almost a decade, which is pretty wild, right? 10 years he was with the Packers, 10 seasons that is, and he was a right tackle the whole time. So it's pretty bananas, and I know we didn't get to that there, but his story's so cool, and I just love his perspective as a guy that played in that game. One thing I wish I would have asked him, but I wanted to get to some other stuff, is what the repetitive questions he was asked for, right? What's the question that is burned into his brain 13 years later that he was asked at Super Bowl Media Week? Maybe we'll get to that another time, but a big thanks to Blue. You can get him on Twitter at @BBulaga. He's a good follow. Ever since he's joined ESPN Wisconsin, he's kicked up his Twitter game. He'll just tweet 3 words and everybody knows what the hell he's talking about. It's awesome. Anyway, all right, you learn something new every day. I did as well. It's time now to wrap up the show with what Strouf learned. And technology and streaming is starting to piss me off. Right, because I have Hulu, and I have Netflix, and I have Peacock, and I have ESPN Plus, and I have Disney Plus, and I have YouTube TV, right? I have all these different things. Well, listen to these geniuses. ESPN, Fox, and the Warner Brothers, which includes TNT Sports, are planning to launch a joint sports streaming service later this year. So for one platform that is unnamed and doesn't have a price yet, you can get all of ESPN's content. You can get all of TNT's content. You can get all of Fox Sports content on demand. It is a genius idea. that came up for the first time 80 years ago because we're just making cable again. What are we like? I have YouTube TV, as I mentioned, and that's kind of now the equivalent of cable. It has a bunch of channels that you can watch live TV on, and it's great, right? I really only use it for like live sports, and I like watching. I'm a Sports Center guy. I've said that before. Every night before I go to bed, I flip on Sports Center. And, so I'm watching college hoops last night. I was watching Clemson and North Carolina, and I was watching some other games, and then I flipped over to SportsCenter at some point, and, that's nice for that. But if we just make a platform with ESPN, Fox Sports, and TNT Sports, we are literally just doing cable. And people have pitched this idea before, right? Like have Hulu and Netflix make this mega deal, make it into one thing, and just combine the prices and make it one app, right? Make it a little bit more accessible. I'm just getting frustrated because we are literally making on-demand cable, and we're just reverting back.
Well, and they're going to have this crazy idea of this special box that will only connect to their service, and you just plug it right into the wall and then it connects perfectly, kind of like those old cable boxes.
Yeah.
This is really dumb. I hate it.
And look, we could say that, but guess who their target demo is? It's me and you, and guess who will likely subscribe?
Yep.
Me and you, right?
Yep.
I'm going to bitch about it and complain about it because it's just cable. But will I ultimately pay for it? Yes.
Well, and my problem is I want to go back to just having cable, but I love the ability to, when I'm gone, to still watch stuff. And that's what I can do with the streaming. And unfortunately, they don't allow that well with the cable companies. Yeah, so it's really both sides have forced each other's hands with this, and it's really annoying and really dumb. And I just wish that the cable providers would understand, hey, allow for direct to consumer of anything that we're sending out on a cable box, and this wouldn't have been an issue and everything would be fine. But instead, we end up with cable on the internet that we already have, but not really. And I just don't understand.
Yeah, me neither. I saw this yesterday. I just tweeted. I just quote tweeted it and said, "I love that we're literally recreating cable." Or I love that we're just recreating cable in 2024 because we are. Right? That's what we're doing. And I don't know. It just seems like everything's getting out of control. And I don't ask me why this is where my brain goes, but I think about things I think about and talk about and consume regularly. And we talked about it last week when I discussed the hiring of Jeff Hafley as the Packers' new defensive coordinator and the state of college football. And Luke Fickell was on Wilde and Tausch today, talked about it a little bit. How the transfer portal and name, image, likeness and recruiting are kind of evolving and changing, and it's different. But ultimately, it's just going to turn into professional sports, right? We're going to have contracts. We might eventually have a cap space. I wouldn't be shocked if that's eventually implemented. Here, it's like we have these streaming services. Everybody breaks off into their own thing, and then they realize maybe it's not the best business model because, consumers don't have unlimited funds, so they're picking and choosing which platforms they pay for. So they're like, hey, we solve that. We all come together and make one, and that's just called cable. Anyway.
Well, I think the issue is that so many times people just want progress for the sake of progress without thinking about, let's actually think about okay, what does this do if hypothetically we just let colleges do whatever the hell they want with all of the money that they have and all of this booster money? And, let's think about, if Alabama doesn't have to go under the table and instead they just hand the money directly, what is that going to actually do to the sport? And just take a second and think about it, kind of like the Milwaukee Brewers with their parking situation that won't have any problems at all and won't have any issues. You can take some time and think about your decisions before you make them, and that's okay.
That's well said. That's well said. They just want progress for the. What'd you say? They just want progress
for the sake of progress.
That's well said. That's well said. All right. Last thing before we go, I did want to mention this before we head out. Country music legend Toby Keith passed away 2 days ago at the age of 62. Had stomach cancer. Unfortunately, succumbed to that at the age of 62. But I grew up in Green Bay, as I've mentioned many times. And in 2009, February 20th of 2009, so just about, 15 years ago. I was 10 years old then. My mom brought me to my first ever concert. It was Toby Keith at the Resch Center in Green Bay. And by all means, am I not the biggest country music fan in the world, but I mean, Toby Keith had some anthems. He had some what the kids call bangers. And I was sad to see that. Like, death sucks. Obviously, it's part of life, but it sucks. And Toby Keith was the first concert I ever went to, and I just have such a big appreciation and love for live music, and I feel like it was kind of spawned at the Resch Center in February of 2009, seeing Toby Keith perform. So that's always tough news, but I did want to mention something on that as that came out yesterday from his team. So that'll do it for us today. We're back with you Friday as we get ready for Super Bowl Sunday. We get ready for a big weekend in college hoops. We get ready for the road ahead. As after Sunday, right, it is full steam ahead on draft analysis and getting ready for free agency, which starts just over a month away from NFL free agency. And I firmly, as I said earlier, do believe the Packers will be active, at least a little bit active, in free agency, because when you reflect on what Brian Gutekunst has done in his tenure as a general manager, is a couple of years ago on the edge, right? Like, there was nobody. I think 2019 or 2020, 2019 that would have been. There was really nobody on the edge. Everybody was gone, and he went out and he got Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, and he signed Adrian Amos at safety. You look at the safety position, everybody's gone. There's two guys under contract. One's a 7th-round pick. One's Benny Sapp. I feel like there could be a safety splash in free agency. So we're only a month away from that. So looking forward to getting into that. We'll get into some draft coverage. College hoops heat up. NBA playoffs are coming quick. This is an exciting time of the year. We'll dive full steam ahead into that beginning next week. But first, we got to preview the Super Bowl on Friday. I can't wait to do it with you. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. If you're listening on the audio side, please rate us 5 stars and recommend it to a friend if you have any. I don't. Big thanks to Tiny Hands, Hunter Vaughn. Big thanks to Bryan Bulaga for joining the show today. That does it for us. We'll talk to you Friday. It's Mr. Relevant, I'm Alex Strouf. We'll talk to you then. Peace.